Welcome to episode 4 of EV Talk. In this episode, we're going to talk about perpetual motion. Since I'm big into the electric car scene, I have talked to hundreds, if not thousands of people about electric cars. Some of these people are on the internet, others are at car shows and green events that I go to. And one of the most common and annoying questions that I get asked is, why don't you take a generator and put it on the rear wheels of your electric car so the car can power itself? Now, of course, this is completely impossible, as it would break the laws of physics, specifically the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Now, a more fascinating aspect is that, believe it or not, most of the people that I really get into these arguments with are actually auto mechanics, or at least people who have some experience working on cars. And I think I've come up with the reason as to why that is. Now, what I have with me here is a standard automotive alternator. Simple alternator that you might find in any gas-powered vehicle on the road. Now, as you can see, you can actually spin this alternator fairly easily by hand. And so a lot of people would probably think that putting something like this on the rear wheels of the car would not create a lot of drag. But what they don't understand is that this alternator is not connected to anything. It is not powering anything. It is not doing any work. If it were, it would be a lot more difficult to turn. And not only that, you'd have to get it up to about 1,000 RPMs before it would really even do anything. And so most people don't have a conceptualization of how much drag it actually does put even on a regular gasoline car.
The other thing you have to keep in mind is that a typical automotive alternator can only produce about 480 watts of power. Let's put that in perspective with some other well-known devices. A typical household compact fluorescent bulb uses 13 watts. A 42-inch plasma TV uses about 300 watts. A window unit air conditioner uses around 900 watts. A central air conditioner uses about 3,500 watts. And an electric clothes dryer uses around 4,400 watts. Now, let's look at how much power an electric vehicle uses. During cruising, an electric vehicle can consume around 5,000 watts. During acceleration, or climbing a hill, it can consume as much as 80,000 watts. So now that you have an idea of how much power an electric car uses, ask yourself, how big of a generator would you need to generate that kind of power? And how much drag would that put on the car? Consider this diagram. Here we have a generator and an electric motor. Now, let's wire them together so that one will power the other. Now, let's connect some belts to some other devices which are out of the picture. In this example, the mechanical energy will travel from the device on the right, be converted into electricity, continue its journey to the electric motor and be converted back to mechanical energy, and then on to its final destination to do some work off to the left of the screen. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this example. In fact, we see this type of thing all the time. For example, a generator at the electric company converts steam power to electricity, which is transferred across miles of electric cable to your home, which in turn can run a vacuum cleaner or other mechanical device. There is something to consider with this scenario though. Every time energy is converted from one form to another, some energy is lost, usually to friction and heat. So let's consider this example, where the two devices are connected both electrically and mechanically. What you have here are two devices that are designed to convert energy from one form to another. Unfortunately, there's no source of energy to begin with. If you were to manually spin this device by hand, it would actually slow down faster due to energy loss than if you disconnected the electrical connection so that the devices can spin freely. So let's consider this example when applied to a car. We'll use the same setup as before with the generator and electric motor connected together electrically. Now, we'll mechanically connect these to the front and rear wheels of the car. So far, you don't have a perpetual motion machine because you could spin the rear wheel of the car and it would transfer the power to the front tire. That's because we're missing the mechanical linkage between the two devices. But if you add the street into the equation, then the generator and the motor are now mechanically linked as well as electrically linked, just as before. So you can see no energy can be transferred in this manner. It would be similar to plugging a power strip into itself. However, The whole argument of a self-powered car is worse than this because in our examples, nobody was attempting to extract energy from this setup. But a car needs energy to accelerate. When people say that a car could power itself using a generator, then it's actually just as bad as suggesting that you could plug a power strip into itself and then draw power out of the situation to power something else. Now, the concept of generating power from the wheels is not new and has actually been in use for years. It's called regenerative braking. Pretty much all hybrids and electric vehicles use this to generate electricity. It works like this. When the electric motor switches to generation mode, it puts an enormous drag on the vehicle, like we discussed earlier. So they figured, why not link the system to your brake pedal? That way when you're ready to stop or slow down the car can actually generate power and slow you down at the same time. Alright, so I'm cruising down the highway right around 70 miles per hour, and I'm about to hit my brakes, but I'm not going to hit them hard enough to engage the brake shoes. So I'm only going to be engaging the regenerative braking, and I'm going to let you watch exactly how quickly that will decelerate the car. Alright, we're about to get off on the access road, and I'm going to engage regenerative braking. Here we go. Fortunately, there was nobody behind me, but we're already down to pretty much nearly stopped in just a very few seconds. And that was without using any brake shoes.
So I hope I've put an end to some of this nonsense about the perpetual motion of a car powering itself. Now, I've also heard other variations, such as putting wind turbines, windmills, whatever, on top of the car, and it's all the same nonsense. The only thing that has even a small amount of reality to it would be a solar-powered car. But in that case, the car isn't powering itself, the power is actually coming from the sun. Of course, unfortunately, solar-powered cars generally can't be normal cars because the amount of power required just cannot be harvested from at least current, today's model solar cells.